Hey, this is Jamey with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in 1987 channel tunnel, what we in the US I think often call the chunnel, which is the passage between France and the UK. If you're as old as I am, you might remember that this was a tunnel that was actually carved out. This was dug in our lifetimes, and it was a major endeavor, major cooperation between France and the UK. This game makes it a competition between the UK and the US in an asymmetric two-player game that I really, really enjoyed. This flew way under my radar. I'd never heard of this. Joe brought it to the table recently, and we played it, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's kind of like, it has the feel of a tug-of-war game, even though you are moving towards each other as you dig the chunnel, rather than kind of pulling away at each other along this tug-of-war track. So that's the core idea. You are digging the tunnel on these cards that are laid out. Oh, right here, cards, tokens on these tracks that you're revealing and then digging out using your drill, using different resources to do so. But there are some really, really interesting systems in this game, and the major one that I want to highlight, other than, I mean, there's lots of cool stuff in this game. I highly recommend checking out a video that goes more into detail about how the game works. But I wanted to highlight the worker placement system because it is really, really cool. Basically, at the beginning of each round, each player draws a set number of tokens, these round tokens, from the bag. So that it's not a bag building game. You're drawing from the same bag. You're not manipulating the bag, but you're pulling tokens from this bag, and then you're stacking them by color. And the reason you're doing this is because they kind of form workers of different heights, essentially, because this is one worker. This is also one worker, even though it's two tokens. This yellow stack is just one worker, even though it's four tokens. And you're using those workers on your turn. You're choosing one of these workers, the entire pile, the entire stack, and you're placing it on an action on the board that contains fewer tokens than what's on that stack. So if I wanted to place this blue token, I need to go to an action. You can see here, there's some actions here. I need to go to an action that has no tokens already there, and I put those tokens there. However, if you say I have this two stack here, and over here there's an action that has just one token, I can place these two tokens on this action space, and when I do, I get this token for myself. It becomes a worker for me to use. And it would, if I already had some black tokens over here, it would join that stack. If not, since I don't have any black tokens, it would become its own little worker stack over here. And think about that for a second. That is really, really cool. Not only are you placing workers, but you're also getting workers back because there's no worker ownership. Any player can have these workers. It's not like the blue workers are mine. They are any player's workers. And that the idea that you could potentially add it to your stack. So this has 4 black tokens here. If I somehow had a stack of, say, 5 yellow, I could place that 5 yellow here and get a very powerful stack back if I want to. And also early in the round, if there's an action space, you could be it's a two-player game. It's a back and forth competitive game. Very early on in the round, I could look over at my opponent's stack and see that they don't have any stacks above 4 tokens, and I could put my 4 stack on a really valuable action and completely, well, not entirely, but most likely block my opponent out of that action for the rest of the round. We didn't do much of that because it's so valuable to hold these taller stacks until later in the game. That was our perception, at least in this game. But it is possible to do that. And at the same time, I stumbled over this for a second because I said that you could completely block out the other player, but that's not necessarily true because that other player could use their tokens. They could find a way to accumulate more than that number of tokens over the course of that round. So eventually they could come back and have a stack of 5 based on other tokens that are out here and take that action space. So it's just a really, really cool worker placement system that I think would probably work in a game with more players as well. And I'd love to see a system like this in another game too, because it's just a brilliant worker placement system. Combined with, you could probably combine it with more of a bag building game if you wanted to have each player customize their bag of tokens and maybe have the colors mean something. There are lots of different directions that you could go with this. But anyway, just wanted to highlight this really cool worker placement system in 1987 Channel Tunnel. If you've played this game or if this reminds you of a worker placement system in another game, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Thanks.